Hello and welcome to Neuroshambles, the podcast that aims to shine a light into some of the murkier corners of what it's like to parent neurodivergent kids. I'm Mark Allen, and every episode I'm going to be swapping stories with my guests about some of the frankly ludicrous nonsense we have to deal with on a daily basis. So, if you're anything like me and you're feeling frazzled, overwhelmed and pretty much an outcast from polite society, join me. Hello and welcome to episode 23 of Neuroshambles. Thank you so much for being here and for taking time out of your own chaotic worlds to listen to this nonsense. Thanks also for your really kind comments about the previous episode, which was with Kieran Rose about conversation. So lots of people sharing their own interactions with their children. Steph Curtis, who was one of our wonderful guests from season 1, got in touch to tell me about her PDA daughter. And she said, our daughter's favourite phrase for years was chatting gets us nowhere, which you've got to admire the brutal pragmatism of that, isn't it? It's like, stop banging on and let's just get going. It's definitely something I can imagine coming out of the mouths of my own children. Anyway, we've got another great show lined up for you where I'm going to be talking to an old friend of mine about what some might say is a slightly controversial topic of the week. We'll also be looking at the positive side of things with neurodiversity champions, tiny epic wins, and what the flip moments. So what am I waiting for? As I'm sure we can all agree, chatting gets us nowhere.
Meet the guest.
So my guest this week is an interesting one because I've known this person for over 20 years, I think, through work initially, and then we lost touch in that time and sort of moved to different parts of the country. But I've always kind of followed her posts with interest on Facebook because we're still Facebook friends. And I don't know if any of you neuroshamblers out there have this, but sometimes on Facebook or the socials, someone mentions stuff about their kids and you'll go, oh, hang on. That smells a little bit neurodivergent-y. And my guest did a few of these posts. And I was like, well, obviously I can't reach out and go, I reckon your kid's neurodivergent because that's not my business, right? But you do keep an eye on things to see how the journey might progress. And that was the situation that I was in with my guest. So then, like about a month ago, I had an email from her saying that she was enjoying listening to the podcast and a lot of the things I was discussing resonated with her kids. And I was like, finally, now we can talk about it. And I'm not just outing your kid as neurodifferent in any way. You know, so you're on board with it. It's all good. We can chat about it. And so here we are now chatting about it. So I am delighted to welcome to the show. It is Kate Ebbutt. How you doing, Kate?
I'm very good, thank you. Yeah, I remember it was actually during the COVID pandemic when I think I posted something and you were like, oh my goodness, this is exactly like Jay. And we kind of had this moment where we were like, oh,
hang on
we
a
think
second.
we're parenting in the same way. I think our kids are different in some similar ways.
Yeah,
it was interesting. And then you started this podcast. I was like, oh, yes. I see.
My people.
Relatable content.
Yeah. So obviously, anytime we have a new guest on Neuroshambles, it's important to know about your setup. So what have you got there, Kate? Who are you working with?
So I am self-confessed neurotypical.
Okay.
My eldest thus far, who is 11, seems to be neurotypical as well. My 9-year-old is diagnosed ADHD on the extended referral pathway for autism.
Oh, nice.
Pretty
the long and knobbly road to diagnosis.
And I co-parent very kind of amicably and happily with my ex-partner, who is very likely ADHD, possibly autistic. He's not had any formal diagnoses, but he did that thing a couple of years ago that adults do where they read about it and they suddenly realise all of the things. I'm not broken. I'm not a bad person. Oh God, all these things make sense, which has been great for him. So yeah, so we kind of have this interesting sort of split between half and half, really.
All right. Well, thank you for introducing us to your setup, Kate. And well, let's crack on because I'm very excited to talk about this topic of the week.
What's the topic of the week?
Now, I realise that this week's topic may be one of the most contentious ones we've done, but I am pretty sure that it's one that many of us parents of neurodivergence have thought about at one point or another, whether you admit it to yourself or not. I cannot be the only one out there that's thought to myself, am I raising an arsehole? Now, just to be clear, I'm not saying my kids are arseholes. Now, at the end of the day, they're kids. And if we're honest, all kids are arseholes to some degree, right? Even the neurotypical ones. So exhibiting undesirable behavior is not exclusive to their neurotype because they're still learning fundamentally, right? They haven't fully developed the skills they need to become a considerate, compassionate, and collaborative member of society, right? But what if, right, bear with me, what if the way we're choosing to parent our neurodivergent kids is setting the wheels in motion for them to turn out to be an arsehole in later life? And I definitely had this thought in my darker moments, and that is a topic that I wanted to dive into this week. One of the things initially is I'm going to need to define what an arsehole is because culturally, the concept of an arsehole may not travel that well. And to date, Neuroshambles has listeners in 53 different countries. So I'm sure not all of them will understand what we in the UK mean by an arsehole. Now, the dictionary definition of an arsehole, firstly, an anus. That's obviously not what we're talking about here. What if we're raising an anus? Does not make sense. What we're talking about is a second definition, which is a stupid, irritating, or contemptible person. Right? Is that a fair definition, Kate?
So I was thinking about this as well as I was talking, and I think what it is are you raising someone you'd be want to be friends with?
Oh, that's a good definition. I like that.
That's what it is, because I think it's that. I think that I don't think I'm not going to raise someone evil. Fundamentally, they're going to have my values. They'll probably be fine. They're not going to like take over the world and I don't know, whatever. But do you want to be mates with them? Do you want to have them around? Do you want to
That is
like
a
hang
really
out with
good
them?
criteria. I've not even
Do you
thought about that.
know?
Yeah.
Right? Like, are you raising someone you're like, yeah, amazing. Come around and hang out. Like, let's spend time together. Let's do something. Like, oh wow, I can't wait to go on holiday with you.
Yes.
You know,
Yeah.
all of that stuff, right? And am I raising someone that I would love to spend time with and be friends with?
Yeah, or are you raising someone who someone said, "Oh, should we get that person around?" You go, "He's a bit of an arsehole."
Exactly.
So that's what we're trying to get to the bottom of. Now, obviously, we can dispense of the stupid part of the arsehole definition here, the dictionary definition of arsehole, because my kids are certainly not stupid, and neither are many of the neurodivergent people that I've had the pleasure of interacting with. It is the irritating and contemptible bit that we'll try and focus in on. But the issue is, right, it's completely subjective. What behavior counts as being irritating or contemptible could be charming and hilarious to someone else, right? Like I've got friends like this. Some of my closest friends I love to bits, but when they first meet people, those people think that they are assholes. I don't know if you have any friends like this. In fact, yeah, I
Yes.
think exactly right. It is a subjective thing, and that's the tricky thing to understand.
Yeah, I think some of this stuff is also about social convention, isn't it?
It's hugely about that. Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
And so I was trying to differentiate and kind of in thinking about this sort of definition and what we were going to talk about where the line between like sort of normative social convention that is sort of helpful if you can do it, people get used to it if you don't, and stuff that's genuinely not okay, that you actually really want your children to learn, that isn't just like, hey, let's conform a bit.
Yeah, so in the former category, you've got like
Yeah.
holding doors open and offering to wash up and saying please and thank you. And then in the second category, it's helping yourself to their cutlery before you leave.
Throwing stuff at you.
Throwing stuff, shitting on the table. There's a whole panoply of behaviours.
Absolutely. That we've all probably experienced from our delightful young people.
Yes. The thing that I find difficult, and I think this is rooted in the social convention thing that you're talking about, is that the criteria of what is an arsehole, I don't think you can accurately and fairly apply to neurodivergent kids. That's not to say that we shouldn't pull them up on stuff, and say, actually, the fact that you're pointing at that person's face is unpleasant and you shouldn't do that because they might be upset by it. But their behavior is coming from a totally different place. Like it's not coming from an inherent understanding of those social conventions that say a neurotypical would pick up and knows. So, I mean, PDA is probably where these behaviors, for me anyway, certainly, are more prevalent. I think that if we're gonna, point the finger of being an arsehole at anyone in my family, it's gonna be Jay. Like, I love him to bits, but some of his behaviors, you think, yeah, just being an arsehole now. And this is because his nervous system's being triggered by PDA, right? He's in fight or flight, and he's going to choose to fight. And well, he's not going to even choose it. It's going to be an instinct in him, right? And that's where I think it's unfair to say that he's an asshole, because it's not anything he has control over. He's not consciously doing it. It's just his nervous system going, I'm taking charge now, and this is how I'm going to react. And if someone's having a panic attack, you're not going to call them an asshole. It's like you have an understanding that their behavior is outside of the bounds of a societal convention, I guess.
Yeah, and I guess that comes to the decisions you make as a parent and how you respond to your children's behaviours, and what you hope is that through a approach that you and I share, and other parents presumably listening to this also share, is a more gentle guiding approach. And my hope is that modelling kindness and empathy and positivity gives them something to work towards. They become the people we want them to be, even if they struggle at this point.
Absolutely. And I think you put it there. My hope is that as well, but it is only a hope. I don't have any guarantees. Yes, the gentle parenting it seems to make sense. And as you say, I like to model it, but I also am aware that there's lots of things I model that my kids do not pick up on. Like
No, I
saying
know.
please or thank you,
Mm.
or flushing the toilet, all of these things. So you're right, because there's no other way that we can really do it. And we put a lot of kind of stock, I think, in the gentle parenting approach, and the low demand approach to help to kind of remove some of the emotional dysregulation, some of the battles that we have. But also, I guess it can be seen by others to be being permissive of behavior that they wouldn't accept. That's where it's really difficult, isn't it? Because we lower our demands and we bend ourselves into pretzels to try and accommodate our kids' needs, to reduce these triggers to their nervous system. But someone looking from the outside who doesn't understand that, doesn't understand the gentle parenting approach, are gonna judge that. Have you ever had that, Kate? The judgment from people who don't get it?
Yeah, of course, absolutely. And I suppose you can see it because from the outside, you just think, well, they're letting them get away with it, and that kid's going to expect everyone to bend and do whatever they want. They're going to be manipulative, or they're going to
Oh,
be,
I hate that.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
the manipulation thing. I hate so much
There's a
because,
really good. Have you read The Explosive Child?
yeah, it's
Where
really good.
there's a bit in that where he says these kids don't do manipulation. It's not about manipulation. You're
It's not
ascribing
possible.
forethought and intent and a
Mm.
nuance to social interaction that they're just not. They're not operating on that level. So attributing malice to them is way off the mark, basically. So yeah, you're right. They're not manipulative
Also,
at
the
all.
idea that they've got forethought, spend some time hanging out, and I really love you to prove that, because yeah,
Certainly, my lot don't.
absolutely.
And
There's so much of this I just think about is about swallowing your own sense of like mortification as a parent, isn't it? Like when my two kids got given these two gifts. People in our lives have been away, and they brought these gifts to my kids, and there's like two hats, really cool. And both kids were like, right, you can pick between them. Like, what hat do you want? And Quinn was like, what other presents are there?
I pick no hats.
I'm just like,
And how
this
is that how is
fine.
that received?
Luckily by very kind people who
Who get it?
understand.
Okay, that's so important though, isn't it? Because
But
sometimes you do see it and people just like, no, they are not down with that at all.
no, absolutely not. But then you tend to not see those people, so that's,
Well,
you
that
know.
over time, those people gradually just sort of whittle their way out of your lives. I know, but it's
But you also kind of know, if you know your kid, you know that I know that Quinn's checking if there are other things for them to consider in the present situation. Like, are there other presents they know, so they get to pick between other ones? Like, what is it, if they don't like it, are there other choices? Like, they're kind of working out what
Yeah, yeah. What else you got back there, lady?
right.
You got a big bag there. It can't just be 2 hats in it. What else you got? I'll take that water bottle.
And they're not doing it nicely, and you really, really want them to.
But their whole process of gift giving is absolutely mired in this social convention, right? Of like, and I've seen some people on Instagram just saying, I hate opening presents in front of people because I have to hide my face if I'm disappointed, and there's an expectation that I'm supposed to be thankful or grateful for something that I didn't fucking want in the first place. And so all of this, as you say, is mired in social convention. And if you don't follow that social convention, or if you don't understand that social convention, then that comes across as rude and people can get offended and they won't bring you gifts anymore, which, I'm sure Quinn is fine with if they're substandard hats.
Yeah, I think that, and I think, oh God, I was listening to the food episode and thinking about the mortification of responses to food. Oh my goodness.
I know.
Like, no, I'm not eating that. Nah. And you're like, that's been really lovingly cooked by your grandmother. You just, and it's fine. No, why is the scrambled egg not on the toast? Why?
Yeah, I know. That is another one where something is given in the spirit of love and is just like spat back in their face. Sometimes literally. Like my kids are not being arseholes at that point. Well, no, to be fair.
Okay, so when are they? When do you think? Am I raising?
Well, okay, I've got a cracker. Yeah. Otto was a complete arsehole. Right. And normally it's not Otto, but I was at a National Trust property. So already on edge, right? Because a lot of people in National Trust properties are kind of older and they don't really understand neurodivergency, and they're not really down with gentle parenting because they weren't fucking raised gently, were they? Jesus. So already my kids are causing a bit of a stir, but I'm okay with that, and they sort of running ahead. Then I see Otto in the distance, and he picked up a stone and he threw it into some bushes. And then I see a woman start telling him off. And I'm a little bit far away. And Otto as well doesn't respond, being told off. He's like, would be very easily overwhelmed. So I'm in protective mode for him. I'm in a what the fuck are you doing? Parenting my own child mode. And so I sort of stroll over there. And I said, I can parent my own children. Thank you very much. And then she went, he threw a stone at a duck. And I was like, oh, fuck. Oh, I've lost all moral high ground at this point. Like, I obviously can't parent my own children. And Otto has just been a complete fucking arsehole. And who was the real arsehole? It was me. Basically, I was having a go at someone for telling my child not to throw stones at ducks. And obviously, I understand Otto. Like, he's not malicious in any way. He just didn't think. He's holding a stone. He's like, I like throwing stuff. He's quite sporty, right? I like throwing stuff. I'll see if I can get that without thinking that's a duck, without the forethought we were talking about earlier, right? Without thinking that that's a duck, it's going to obviously hurt the duck. So he does that. And then someone observes that from afar and goes, this kid's an arsehole, because they don't understand it. So I think in that situation, we have to remove the arsehole tag and go, he's not being an arsehole. He's just, he's just autistic. I don't know how you explain that to people in a reasonable way. I just sort of shepherded my children away and tutted a bit. And I'm under no illusions that my parenting was judged the most harshly out of all of that.
I don't know if it's quite arsehole, but I think there's an entitlement that comes with neurodivergence that I am very conscious of. I don't know if entitlement is the right word, but like
there's a self-centeredness.
Yes.
Go on, you can say it.
They're
selfish.
and in an adult, that's really annoying.
That is a very, very classic behaviour of an arsehole, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Of being selfish.
And like only wanting to play what you want to play, only want to have a conversation you want to have, only wanting to do things you want to do. Like,
yeah.
And then, I do. I love the thing you want to do. I'm sure it'll be fine and fun and great. And actually, Quinn is the imaginative powerhouse of our household. Their like superpower is play and imagination, and it's a beautiful gift. And the number of times they get us into a wonderful imagined world, all of us, and it's wonderful. But sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes you just don't want to.
Yeah,
Do you know?
exactly.
And
Want to live in the real world for a second, Quinn.
the consequence
Join
of
me.
not is not always what. So you're kind of weighing up this thing where you're like, that would be fun. And if they came with a certain amount of like charm, that might help. But actually, they're just like,
Yeah.
no, go do. And a little bit of charm, babe.
Yeah, I know. And that's so hard to do because it's something like, as we've discussed, they don't understand the benefits of sugarcoating the pill there because it's a factual thing. I don't want to do this. There's no consideration for your feelings. And actually, we have been doing this same game for me all morning. So maybe we'll just have a little bit of a reciprocation in the afternoon. That never enters into their mind because it's not something they want to do. And why should they pretend they want to do it? And again, judging by the neurotypical handbook, that is the behaviour of an arsehole. But you can't level that at neurodivergence because they're not operating on that level because they're not picking up the social expectations or the sort of the expectation of collaboration that neurotypicals do.
But I feel a burden of responsibility about raising children to give them skills and tactics that help them move through the world without placing burden on others when they're in adulthood.
Yes, I completely agree with that. What's your secret? How the fuck do you do that? Yeah, I totally agree.
I'm
but
not saying you. I guess so. That's why we're having the conversation. Do you know what I mean? Like that
yeah,
is
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
We're here because of that burden, right? We know you don't want to unleash somebody on the world who's gonna like expect their partner to do everything for them, right, or whatever, as an example. And
Yeah.
so you're thinking, well, what is it I can do to make sure that this person is not being forced to mask and being forced to like do behaviors that make them miserable or traumatized, but equally give them enough skills so they can not be an arsehole.
That's the exact balance, isn't it? That's the balance that is so like this the constant I'm constantly striving for of going, I don't want to teach them to mask. We all know that masking is dangerous and it's harmful and you know, we don't want to be going down that route. So I absolutely want you to be as authentic as possible. But if your authentic self is an arsehole, maybe we just take your last mask of that bit a little bit. I don't
Yeah.
how do you
I think it's so. I'm really interested in this thing about masking because I think that there are some really important skills about understanding when social conformity is helpful
Mhm.
and learning some tactics that help you to move through society in a way that is, I guess, easier. Is there a way to understand that you have needs because of your neurodivergence, but that you know how to contain or relativize them in order to move through the world? There
Yeah.
must be a way to do it that isn't. Do you know what I mean?
It's a tricky balance. I was speaking to my last episode. It was with Kieran Rose, who's an autistic advocate. He's the autistic advocate, and his thing was like, I've just created a world where I basically don't interact with neurotypicals if I can help it. He's
Mm.
sort of, you know, the way he's cultivated his life is he's created this world where he doesn't have to mask because he doesn't find himself around people where he would need to do that, but it's taken him a long time to get there, and our kids can't do that. Our kids are at school; they're out in the well. Some of our kids are at school, but you know, our kids are out in the wild interacting with neurotypicals because you know they don't have that the freedom to shape their own worlds yet. You know, and we can do it as much as we can. But you're right; there needs to be some element of them being able to understand social lubrication a little bit more, and that, but.
Mm. Yeah.
Or conversely, the world just fucking lightens up a little bit and understands that neurodivergent people are here. They are amongst us and they have every right to exist and to express themselves as they want. And let's not all be so precious about it.
So I guess there's rudeness and then there's consideration of others.
Yes.
And I'm interested in that particularly because I
Hmm.
think I sort of, broadly speaking, agree that rudeness has much more give in it from my perspective. I'm much more willing to kind of see that. But I think that like having tactics that let you understand that a space is messy and it's a shared space, so I'd like to contribute to that. Understanding that you might need to put some of your needs to one side in order to make space for people you care about. Understanding that you're not always the centre of things, and so your life is richer and fuller with other people
Yes.
as well. And so some of that requires compromise and movement. And I don't know. I don't know if that's an unrealistic thing to expect.
No, I see. My hope is that it's not unrealistic, and that it's an age thing. That
Yeah.
eventually they will learn it. Now I know that I have walked among neurotypical children before, and they do have that, right? They do have that. What can I
Mm,
do to help tidy the dinner table, or
mm.
like you're saying, that communal understanding of that stuff needs doing communally, and I can contribute to that, right? So I know that kids of Jay's age already have that.
Yes.
I know that Jay doesn't, and I'm hoping that at some point that maybe it's just a developmental delay, and that he will get there eventually once he sees, the benefits of doing that are actually helpful for him as well. If he does that, then other people might do stuff for him that he wants. I don't know. It's probably going to be transactional in terms of the way that Jay perceives it, I think, but maybe he doesn't see that yet, and that he will grow out of that. Like, as I know neurodivergent adults that get that. They probably have to train themselves to do it, and so maybe it's just so far out of reach at the moment. They're not exhibiting that, so I have to have hope that it eventually pans out, that they have those skills, and that not all neurodivergent adults are like Elon Musk.
No, indeed.
Because that's the fear, isn't it? It's just like, oh yeah, he's the worst advocate for what we're talking about now, because he is neurodivergent and he's an asshole. So you put those two side by side and go, well, yeah, actually, we do need to judge. I mean, no, he's a neurodivergent, but also we do need to judge the shit that he's doing is him being an asshole, right?
Yeah,
I,
absolutely. I do, and you do. I do meet adults who I'm very conscious are probably undiagnosed, but certainly neurodivergent, and
Mhm.
they're also an asshole.
Yeah, but which bit's the
Right.
neurodivergency? Which they just don't get a blanket. They don't get let off, do they?
No.
Just because they're neurodivergent, like they shouldn't anyway.
And I wonder if their parents were asking, are they an asshole enough? That's all I'm saying.
One thing I find difficult is, especially amongst my kids' peers, is neurotypical kids seeing the way that I parent my kids, or the accommodation that my kids get because of their neurodivergency, and thinking it's unfair. Right. So it's not the parental judgment, it's judgment from peers that are saying, hang on, that kid gets to do whatever the fuck he wants. Like, he gets to just kind of walk out of class when he doesn't fancy it, or he gets accommodations made if he doesn't want to go to assembly. I don't want to go to assembly, but I've got to, so that's a difficult thing to square. And I once had this encounter with someone who we were quite close friends with, and Jay was very close with their son. And just offhand, she was like, "Oh yeah, my child just feels it's a bit unfair that Jay is allowed to get away with being naughty in class." And this was quite a close friend, and I was just like, have you not been paying attention to like everything we've been telling you about autism and about Jay's diagnosis journey? And like, I think he'd only just been formally diagnosed, but we've been trying to explain it. It's like, he's not being naughty. You labeling him as naughty is you fundamentally misunderstanding everything we've told you. And unfortunately, I wasn't confident enough as an advocate of Jay, and I didn't understand enough about how to push back on that to be able to give a decent answer. But that really got to me, that a lot of people just see it as unfair that they get to behave in that way.
I mean, it sounds like the adult's the problem, not the child there, frankly.
No, yeah, no, it,
Do you
it
know what I mean?
is
The adult
definitely.
hasn't said, actually, as you know, Jay really struggles and the school haven't done that. And if our school not talking to you about it, because maybe we go back to school, like a good, supportive, thoughtful adult is going to push back against that.
No.
So it can't.
Also, her kid loved hanging out with Jay.
Yeah.
So actually, it was
Kids
her.
are
It was
mostly
her
fine.
saying it's not fair.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, my kid doesn't think it's fair. It's like, be honest, it's you that doesn't think it's fair,
Yeah, I
isn't
think
it?
kids are kind of,
Prick.
yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Of course. Yeah.
So they are not.
Well,
They're not.
try
They're
having
not
it.
one of our select circle of friends now. They sort of very quickly drifted away after that.
Well, I have it inside our family unit. So I have a neurotypical child and a neurodivergent child, and they have very, very different needs.
Oh, hell yeah, exactly. How do you cope with that?
And
Because
so,
all of mine are all over the place, so it's fine. I do, yeah. But
yeah, like
how do you square one against the other? And it's like, how come Quinn's allowed to do that and I'm not?
100%. I get loads of that. And to be honest, Bo knows that he's a very, very mature kid, but sometimes he's just like, why is Quinn? Why am I the one? Why am I in trouble? Why does Quinn get to do that?
Mm.
Why? It's
Hmm.
not fair. Like, why? And I'm like, because Quinn can't. They can't do it. It was really interesting actually. So we went to Germany for a week with my mum, who's a very wonderful woman.
I
As a
know, and
fabulous woman.
I can confirm
She's
she's amazing.
she's incredible, and she's so great with the kids. There's a huge amount of time with them, and so I was away with her and the two kids, and we got trains across Europe together, and it was bonkers and hilarious. And so we had a rule really early on, which is Bo and I take a suitcase, and Mum takes Quinn.
Okay.
And Bo was like, "Why do I have to pull a suitcase?" And Quinn doesn't. And I'm like, "Well, because Quinn can't pull a suitcase, and somebody has to hold on to Quinn. And you know that if the second someone hasn't got Quinn, they're gone. You know that because
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
what's the
yeah.
phrase we've been saying every time we've been out of the house since Quinn could walk? Where's Quinn? Yeah, that phrase. Great. Thanks, Bo.
Yeah,
That phrase.
up a tree, in a bush, on the back of a bin lorry.
Literally, where's Quinn? Where's Quinn is the phrase of our household.
Yeah.
And I was like, so Bo, you've got to carry a suitcase because Quinn finds it really hard. But do you know what? You can put down your suitcase anytime you want. And Quinn can never put down their suitcase. And so carry your suitcase. And
Yeah, that's a really
Bo
nice way of
actually
putting it.
he really got it and he really did respond to that, he really saw it actually. It was a
Hmm.
kind of beautiful natural analogy through life,
Yeah,
right?
no, that's really nice. Yeah.
It doesn't always work. He still thinks it's unfair.
I had a recent experience that sort of where I've had to explain Jay's behavior. We went camping recently. I had quite a traumatic experience where everyone went out for the day to go to some sort of science observatory or something like that. I was like, yeah, we're not going to do that. I'm not going to bring my kids into a public place. We'll just hang out in the woods here. It's great. It was absolutely throwing it down, but my kids love the rain and we had a really lovely time. But Jay, after day 2 of camping, and especially kind of the place he is at the moment, he was done. He was done. He didn't want to be here anymore and he wanted to go home. And obviously, like we're all having a really lovely time. We're there with a group of friends. We go there every year. It's a wonderful time. And we're there for like another 2 nights. And we've only been there one night. So I'm like, well, let's just stay here one more night and then we'll leave a day earlier than we were planning. So I'm going to compromise, but at least, because the other two, we have to think about the other two as well. But he just decided he was done and he couldn't do it. And I saw something in him flip. And, he's shouting at me at this point, and I'm doing the gentle parenting. I'm being really calm and going, look, we have to think about everybody's needs, and I need to see my friends, and the other two are really enjoying it. So let's think about everyone's needs. And he starts escalating it. And so I sort of get the other two to sort of move away from the tent a bit so that I can, keep it a little bit cooler. And I turned back around and he found like a kitchen knife and he stabbed the air tent with it. So the tent just went and just fucking collapsed. And I was so fucking cross. And I had to, I mean, that is proper arsehole behavior by anyone's stretch, right? Like, you have basically decided what's going to happen now. I kept my shit together. Somehow, amazingly, I was very calm and I just went, I really don't want to see you right now. I think you should go to your tent and we can talk about this later. And then I just, so the reason I'm telling this story is that everyone came back from their day at the Science Observatory. Hey guys, have you had a fun day? And I'm just like there with my head in my hands, like the other two cowering in the woods. The air tent just absolutely deflated. And I was like, yeah, it's been a bit of a challenge. I then had a very interesting conversation with one of my friends who quite reasonably said, aren't you going to punish him? And it's like, well, I can't. It's not a thing that I can do. Not because it won't work. And I had to explain. I have to try and explain it to them. Not for her, but she's got a teenage son who kind of was curious about why I was doing it this way. So, firstly, I sort of need to explain a little bit about my friend because she's wicked. She's an excellent parent, but her kids are neurotypical. So she's playing by very different rules. Like, so she is like that excellent parent of she's fun and she's really hardworking and she's compassionate, but she tolerates no nonsense. Like the kids are all like have a really fun time, but if they cross the line, they know they've crossed the line and they get back into line. It's kind of how I imagined I would parent before I met my kids. And then it's like I've had to change that. But she is what you describe as a no nonsense parent. And so with my setup, she sees a fuck of a lot of nonsense. There's a lot of nonsense with my lot. And so I have to explain it to her, what was going on and what triggered the behavior. And and she wanted to explain it to her teenage son, because he also had questions like, how is he not getting punished? Like, he's literally stabbed a 10. Why is he getting away with it? And the way I described it was via a computer analogy. And I made it up on the spot, and I think I quite like it. Computers have a certain amount of RAM, random access memory. Basically, RAM helps the machine manage lots of different tasks at the same time, and it applies different bits of memory to different tasks, and it keeps things running smoothly. Right now, some machines have shitloads of RAM that can handle anything that you throw at it. Right, so they can be running Photoshop, they can be editing a podcast, they can be uploading a video to YouTube, and they're still operating absolutely fine. Right, they can handle multiple things without any bother. That's not how Jay's set up, though. Right, he's got quite a small amount of RAM. He doesn't have the capacity to handle lots of different things at the same time. He's like, lots of applications are open in Jay's brain, and he doesn't really have the RAM that he needs to function on all of those at the same time. So some applications he just shuts down. His hearing, for example, he doesn't bother using sometimes because it's like, I've got other shit that I have to use my memory on. And there are also processes running in the background in Jay's brain that no one else has to deal with, that no one else is aware of. There might be a chainsaw going on, like in the distant field, that he can't handle, or it might be too cold for him, or he might be hungry. All of these things take up his RAM. It might be having a group conversation, it might be being away from his safe space. But what happens when your computer takes on too much, right? When there are too many processes running and the computer doesn't have enough RAM, it fucking overheats, it buffers, right? You get the spinning beach ball of death, right? Nothing happens, everything kind of shuts down, and eventually it crashes. And that is an autistic meltdown. That's exactly what happens to Jay. And the only way that you can handle that is to either close down loads of different things so that it's only focusing on one thing at a time, or you restart it, you regulate, you just take it away and you turn it off and you just let it do its thing and cool down, and then it comes back up and it operates normally again. And that's how I chose to explain it in terms of what's going on with Jay.
Do they understand?
I think so. I don't know. As an analogy, I like it. It's not perfect, but
I get it.
helps.
I think it's great.
I think it helps people understand that they're just born with more RAM than others, and they're privileged enough to be able to handle all the processes that life throws at it, and not everyone is. And you have to make accommodations there. Sometimes doubt definitely creeps in my weaker moments. Have you ever looked at your kids and gone, are you autistic, really? Or are you just a dick? Have you ever had that just in a moment going, you know what you're doing here? Like, you're not this. There is forethought to this. There is artifice to what you're doing.
Well, yeah, as I said, I think if you're not questioning it, there's something, I don't know, you're not paying attention. Like, you have to look very serious at the situation and just be like, no, this can't possibly be.
You're just fucking with me, aren't you? I know, I could tell.
Yeah.
Yeah, and maybe they are at some point. But then I do also, very quickly remember the massive journey that we've been on to understand them and to get their diagnosis, and all the hoops we've had to jump through, and many professionals have had a say in this whole process to go, yep, it's definitely autistic ADHD. And then I go, oh yeah, okay, fine.
Yeah, I think at least I have the control version.
Oh yeah, I forget that. Yeah, it's like, what would Bo do?
It's really helpful because I'm just like, same input, different output, or whatever it is. But
I have that with all three of mine. So all three of mine have the same input, but they output in wildly different ways, all of them. So I don't know, man. The other thing I have, again, the other area of doubt that I sometimes feel is I like, yeah, I'm gentle parenting and I'm really chill and I'm lowering demands. But do you ever catch sight of yourself and think, am I just being lazy? It's just lazy parenting. Like, am I just letting them get away with murder because it's the path of least resistance?
Making children do things
And
is so tiring. Oh, it's just really wearing. Making them children do things they really don't want to do is exhausting, and not in like a
yeah,
parenting is exhausting way, but in like a soul sucking way.
yes, I've said this same thing 4 different times in 4 different ways to try and get this response, and you're still not doing it.
And we have to leave the house, and we have to do this thing, and there's no, and I can't, and I'm so sorry that you really don't want to, and you don't want to come off your iPad, and you don't want to put your shoes on, and you don't want to go where I want to go, and when we get there, you're probably going to be an arse, and I don't want to do any of those things. But tragically, we really do have to do all of those things.
Yeah, this kind of the laziness really is like, I am just going to let this fly. I'm going to let you have screen
Oh,
time.
100%. 100%.
Right? That is gentle parenting. I understand that you need that.
But also, Mark, we need that.
I,
We need that.
we
Do you know what I mean?
We really do. Sometimes I just need a cup of
Just
coffee.
like
I
it's
just
a
need
gift.
that cup of coffee. Have everyone have screen time. Have my screen. I don't give a shit.
I will look at the wall
Just, like,
right
have
now.
my screen. I will parent again in like 10 minutes,
Absolutely.
but just for now.
Great.
But I have that. But it is that, you know, with the gentle parenting and being a bit more permissive, I do feel like sometimes you're right. It is. We have every right to be lazy. It's not lazy because of where it comes from, but I do feel guilty sometimes.
And
I
in
think.
public as well, when you're sort of letting your child climbing up on that really inappropriately high thing, and you're like, yeah, if they come down, it's gonna be a nightmare. So I'm just gonna like chill. And I sort of trust their judgment because we've had this conversation before. And then all that running over there, they're doing that thing over there, they've just kind of gone there, and you look
Yeah.
like the most irresponsible, lazy, you know, laissez-faire parent.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah.
But you've risk assessed it. You've hung up before. You know what's happening. You do know that they're going to be fine.
Broadly.
And you know, you're making
I know.
active choices. You just look really passive and lazy while you're doing it.
Yes, I do. You know, allowing them to be arseholes sometimes. I think that's the thing. That's where I feel that the laziness creeps in. Is, and it's not laziness, but this is where I perceive myself to be lazy. Is when Jay in particular just says really horrendously rude stuff to me, and I just don't rise to it, and I don't pull him up on it because I should. I like, you know, I get where it comes from, but I absolutely should more often than I do say what you just said then is actually quite hurtful and I don't appreciate it. But I also then know that is going to escalate the situation. Also, you just get so immune to it, don't you? You stop being offended, and that's where I need to be better at going. Now you're being an asshole, because that is you can. I get that you're frustrated, and I get that you don't want to do this, but you also have a million different ways you can communicate this, and you've got an incredible vocabulary. You don't need to use those words in that specific order. You don't need to say it like that, but I don't. I choose not to do that because it will escalate the situation.
Yes, absolutely. You have to pick your battles, don't you? And you can't.
But it's down to what I was talking about with Jess Kane back in season 1 of, do you advocate enough for yourself? And I don't,
Yeah.
you know, and that's actually important to go, what you're saying now, I find unpleasant and unnecessary, and I'm not going to accept it. So I'll walk away now, or whatever it is I do. But I don't articulate it because I don't want the battle. And then what's he learned there? If he's unpleasant, the person that's annoying him goes away. That's a win for him, right?
But then you go back to, what does it really mean to win with people withdrawing from you? Is that a win? Maybe there isn't. I don't know. It's hard, isn't it?
For him, it is in that
I
moment.
guess so.
Yeah, because that's what he wants. That's what he wants. But I mean, I can pull him up on it and go, you can say that in a different way, and it will get a better result, and it will not result in this conversation, which neither of us want to have.
Yeah, I think I definitely have got better at that in the last year or so, partly from having valuable people in my life observe it and say, I don't think that's okay.
Yeah.
And me kind of seeing it externally and not wanting to allow that to be part of my relationship with my child.
Yeah, and also it's about modeling for the other
Yes.
kids as well. For Otto in India, for example, because sometimes I've found that India has tried saying stuff to me that Jay has said, and obviously coming from India, it's like, what the fuck did you say? What the hell? And so then I do say, look, it's not okay for Jay to say that, and it's not okay for you to say that, but
I need to tell Jay that too.
I know, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What we need to do is find a fun and light-hearted way to do it, I reckon.
Play is so helpful.
It
Yeah,
really is, because
massive.
I do that sometimes when
Yeah.
like I can really diffuse an argument that I'm having with Jay by
Yes.
humor. So comic exaggeration is the best. He's like, "Oh, you're the worst dad in the world." I'm like, I'm the worst, really, because I heard about this guy who locks his kids in the shed and he feeds them his toenails, and that's all they get to eat. Am I really worse than that guy? And then he then it just catches him off his stride, and then you can both get involved in that comic exaggeration. So that's a good way of doing it, but you've got to have the energy for that.
Yeah,
Sometimes you just don't have it. It's like, no, I can't. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult, isn't it? It's constantly a struggle, but sometimes I get it right.
Parent, right? Like, you can only
Yeah.
do these things if
Yeah.
you're being supported and you have space and you have enough in your own bank.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's not always. It's not always easy. At the end of a 10-day stint of solo dadding, it's my spoons have run dry.
Yeah.
Another good way of sort of checking arsehole behavior, I find sarcasm is great. Sarcasm is a really good way of it, because again, it's that humor, right? It's a way of shining light on something that they've said, but by making it fun instead of sort of challenging them directly. So that's quite a nice way of doing it.
Yeah, and also just like but also I can get ahead of the game as well if I introduce play beforehand. It's like Quinn likes to pretend to be cats, so if you can play to do something, to get them somewhere, to get them involved, to get them doing something, like play ahead of the game makes so much difference. It makes such a difference.
Yeah.
But again, you have to have the energy and forethought to do it.
Yeah, but that's the kind of the fun thing, right? It's like, when sometimes if I know there's going to be a battle over breakfast, I'll just adopt a Scottish cafe owner persona. Would you like fruity bagels? And I do the whole breakfast order in Scottish accent. It's not a great Scottish accent, but it's diverting enough to sort of for them to go, oh, okay, I'm not going to have a battle this morning because this is kind of fun and different. The other thing is because I do feel like, politeness is a thing as well, right? That's arsehole behavior. It's not saying please and thank you. And that's the constant battle. And this is something that I covered with Joe Matthews in the social etiquette episode back in season 1. I do constantly correct them when they don't say please and thank you, because again, that's an easy thing. I know, and that hopefully just for whatever reason, it still doesn't stick, but it hopefully should just, by repetition, by modeling, should just be a thing to go, just going to say please or thank you. I'm going to say please, certainly, because at least it gets me what I want quicker. Because that's one of the things I do. If they don't say please, I just stand there like I'm a robot that's shut down.
Yeah.
And I don't even ask them, and then they mic on and they go please, and then you go, oh, thank you so much, so kind, and you go really over the top. Oh, thank you so much, I'd be honoured, I'd be absolutely delighted to get you what you want. And then it kind of makes it a bit more fun.
Yeah, another thing my mum did, which the kids really like, is having completely over the top pleases and thank yous. Oh, please, dearest, darling mother, please, would you please? And then I get this stupid, absurd, extended,
yeah, I love it,
play, and that came from my mum, which is a nice, again, this absurdity and play.
But if they carry that into the outside world and say that to a waiter, they're gonna again think this guy's
better
an
than
arsehole.
nothing.
Would you like to see the menu? Oh, please, thank you ever so. That would be absolutely delightful. You're the most kind. You'll be like, yeah, this guy's an arsehole. So it's contextual, isn't it? The whole thing, it's all contextual. Now we talk about kind of, am I raising an arsehole? And I'm specifically thinking about a lot of Jay's behaviour in this, but conversely, I do sometimes think with Otto, he's not an arsehole enough. Like I need to be sort of taking a little bit of Jay's arsehole and then injecting it into Otto somehow, because he needs to be able to advocate for himself more. He needs to be able to make more demands and to sort of say the things that he needs and to be a little bit more forthright. And unfortunately, in our household, it's very difficult to do that because of PDA, right? You know, the PDA profile gets so much more attention and so much more of the focus. And how do you train kids to be more of an arsehole? Is that a thing?
Yeah, I mean, I
I
definitely have
don't
that,
know.
in a different way, but with the difference between my two kids, because you're always going to ask Bo. He's always going to accommodate. He's always going to have to, you know,
Yeah,
carry the
yeah.
load. And I guess because, typical, maybe that's fine. But also, I don't know. I kind of want him to have the space to be like, I might be neurotypical, but actually, come on, enough, and I think,
But is he going to do
no,
that?
not really, because
Because again, it's an unwinnable battle because you need to teach him to. I mean, to expect him or Otto or India to understand the nuances of when you need to call people out on their behavior and when you need to don't know that I am actually getting what I want this time. Like, I don't know how to do
it's
that.
really hard.
And I'm supposed to be the grown
Yeah,
up, right? And I've been studying this for fucking
yeah.
ages and I still don't know how this all fits together. So I don't know how the kids are expected to know when they need to not be as submissive and subservient and when they need to be able to kind of articulate their own needs and not just articulate them, but kind of push for them and going, no, I want to sit in the front today. It's my birthday. That kind of thing is really hard. And I don't know. I need that myself as well, to be honest.
Yes, you
I
do,
know
Mark.
that's an aside.
Yes, I think it's very clear. Um, all listeners would agree, having listened to you talk a lot,
Oh, do you
Mark.
think?
You do need to look after yourself more, please. Yeah.
But I don't know how you do that. How do you? Is there a class that I can go to? One of the questions I think as well, and I think this is an important one to kind of consider, is do we actually want them to change? Like I know that their behavior can be challenging, right? And it can be undesirable, but should we be trying to get them to conform to neurotypical expectations, knowing everything that we know about masking and how dangerous masking can be? And we've kind of touched on it a little bit earlier, but isn't it okay that there are just people out there that are a little bit abrasive? you know, we all know them.
I think having the choice is helpful, and having the availability of skill sets is helpful. And so I don't want my child to feel forced into it, but I want them to know that
Mhm.
I've given them as many guiding ways to navigate the world as possible.
Yes, but it's so difficult. But maybe this is put back to the lazy parenting thing again and going, maybe I just don't bother and I just let them go
Well, this
wild
is why.
and
So I was
then they'll work themselves out, right? They'll work it out.
I don't mind if my child's abrasive, but I do mind if they are so self-absorbed that they don't contribute to other people's lives in ways that are bringing good into the world, right? Like I don't want them to be so self-absorbed and unable to flex that they're not doing that. And so that's it for me. I don't mind if they're rude as long as they know how to care for others.
Yes. Okay. I I think that might be a step too far for Jay at the moment where he is now. I also think that is an expectation of them operating in a neurotypical world. And if they were going to be operating in a world that was just with neurodivergence, you wouldn't have that expectation, right? You wouldn't have that demand because there wouldn't be that expectation from the other people they're with. So again, talking with Kira Rose in the last episode, and actually just talking to loads of guests who say they're neurodivergent kids, find neurodivergent people to hang out
Yeah,
with,
that's true.
and then that arsehole behavior is just not seen as arsehole. It's not perceived in that way. It's nullified.
Mm.
No one's taking umbrage about someone talking too much about their special interest because they're just waiting until they stop so they can say their special interest. There's no umbrage taken in a strictly neurodivergent situation, which I find really interesting because the definition of what an arsehole is a societal construct. And it's a neurotypical construct. In that, I don't think neurodivergence. Well, maybe they do. I'm not speaking on behalf of neurodivergence, but I don't think neurodivergents are going to be judging people for the vast array of things that could be considered arsehole behaviour that neurotypicals are doing. Neurotypicals are much more judgmental of what constitutes arsehole behaviour because they understand what these invisible societal rules are that everyone's supposed to adhere to, and they're policing it in their own way by being offended by people swearing inappropriately or by people, butting into conversations or being self-centered, as you mentioned earlier. I would be interested to hear what a neurodivergent person thinks arsehole behavior is, because it will be different. It will be definitely be different, I think, than what a neurotypical would perceive.
Yeah, maybe we're the assholes.
Yeah, exactly. What is an arsehole? People who insist on small talk when they don't actually care what you say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, what is an arsehole? Someone who insists on you making eye contact when you find it physically uncomfortable.
Yeah.
It's all perspective, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
so
definitely.
maybe we don't want them to change. Maybe we don't want the kids to change, because this is the thing I'm saying. Like that, it's really important that my kids are authentic, and if we expect them to be inauthentic to satisfy another view of what is actually an arsehole, at what cost is that to them? If they're learning to mask, it's not healthy for them, right? There's an argument that I've heard made of that, like, this whole insistence of taking turns and sharing is bullshit anyway. Why are we adhering to this? That it's a weird thing that we're insisting everyone has to adhere to. What if I don't want to share? I'm not interested in what you want to eat. Why should I share what I've got? And being an arsehole is advantageous in many ways.
I think most of this just comes out of our desire for our children to grow into happy humans. And so you worry that if they don't work out how to be in the world, they'll be less happy. But perhaps you're right. Maybe they surround themselves with people that love and support them as they are. They have enough skills to get through life, and that's all they need. Maybe our fear of raising an arsehole is ours, and we should manage that without inflicting it on our children.
It's not all rubbish.
I mean, one of the positives of having an awareness of arsehole behaviour and how that does and doesn't apply to our kids is I view the world in a different light, from a different angle. I'm much more aware that a lot of people whose behaviour I might be offended by or might have historically been offended by is potentially caused by neurodivergency. So I just let it slide, because I see a potentially a different context to that behaviour that I wouldn't necessarily have done before.
When you were talking about having neurodivergent kids has made you gentle parent, I think that is a better model of parenting across the board. It's how I've parented my other child too.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because it is sort of more autocratic parenting is not suitable for all kids, as we know from bitter experience. But gentle parenting just applies to everyone.
Yes.
It's. I quite like it when I meet neurotypicals who have been parented in much more sort of a much firmer way. You sort of see them open up a little bit, and because you're a bit more playful with them and you're a little bit less judgmental with them, and it's really nice, and it is through gentle parenting that's possible. And I think also gentle parenting means that I've built a relationship of trust with my kids, which I wouldn't have been able to before.
Yes.
Because, we're a safe space, right? They don't fear reprisals. They don't fear repercussions, because we let shit slide, right? And we let them express themselves in the way they need to. And, that sometimes maybe feel like you're being a bit of a doormat, but conversely, at least there's that trust there that wouldn't be there if you were punishing them for the way they express themselves, for example.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But it is fucking hard, let's face that as well.
But I'm not sure it would be easier the other way. I'm not sure.
Oh, no, we know. That's why we do it this way, right?
Yeah. So I think it's hard no matter what, right? At least this has more joy, connection, and play as well as all the shit.
Yeah.
Neurodiversity champions.
Okay, we're going to get on to neurodiversity champions now. This is the section where if you want to give a shout out to any people or organisations that are champions of neurodiversity, then let's hear it. Kate, have you got anyone?
There's a queer parenting group in Sheffield that has been an amazing support of parents who have neurotypical, neurodivergent, and queer kids in it, and it's been amazing. And I think there's something about local networks that really changes your experience of parenting.
Yeah, 100%. Just yes, having meetups with like-minded people that you're not being judged at, and you can just fully be yourself as a family is hugely important. And yeah, so definitely worth a shout out there. I'll put a link in the show notes to anyone who's specifically based in Sheffield.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've got one that I wanted to give a shout out to because this is a totally unexpected, and this is something that Tam organised in the summer holidays, and I was very sceptical at first. But there's a company called Angling for Education, right?
Oh my God.
Who do fishing for neurodivergent kids. And Jay has always banged on about how he wants to do fishing, right? And I was just like, I don't think you got the patience for it. And because fishing can be very frustrating, I think. I mean, I've not really done a great deal of it, but I can imagine for Jay that if he stands there for a long time and doesn't catch a fish, he's going to get really frustrated and it's going to trigger some kind of meltdown. And Otto might not have the dexterity to be able to do it, and he might not be patient enough, certainly because his ADHD is off the charts, and India might get cold. So I was very skeptical, but Tammy's incredible at finding shit for the kids to do. And they went and they had the best time. They absolutely loved it. The parents weren't allowed to go with them, right? So the kids are dropped off. So it was only those three. For some reason, by a quirk of fate, it was only my three kids, and someone took them on a lake and taught them to fish, and they caught loads of fish. Apparently, like I've got some photos of them with like really big fish. And when they came back in, because I was working that day, and they came back in, I could just hear this excited chatter, and they all came in and told me about the fish they caught, and they were so excited by it. It was just like, man, that was such a lovely thing that someone has done that specifically for neurodivergent kids. So obviously they understand how best to do this, but crucially, to make sure that they actually get some fish.
That's so nice.
So that was a massive success. They did it twice. They actually did it twice in the summer. And yeah, so a massive shout out to Angling for Education in Sussex. I'll put the link in the show notes for them because it was that is a neurodiversity champion in a very great way.
Love that.
What the flip?
So we got what the flip moments. These are the moments that as parents of neurodivergent children, we are stopped in our tracks when they say or do something. We're just like, I don't know how to respond. This happens regularly to me, and I've got a couple of examples, but have you got anything for us, Kate?
I picked Quinn up from Woodcraft Folk, and it was like getting dark, and they've been in a cemetery picking blackberries and looking at gravestones and stuff. And Quinn was like, "Mummy, we have to go over here." And they dragged me off into a darkening woodland. And I was like, I don't know where I'm going. It's getting dark. It's quite cold. Everyone else has left. I'm walking through a woodland with a child who's frankly not a very reliable anything. Really? What am I doing? Why am I doing this? Why have I said yes to this? And they sat down and they had arranged a little clearing, and they were like, "Mummy, we're just going to meditate." And we sat in the middle of a graveyard, and they were like, "Listen to nature." And this is a child that's never sat anywhere, listened to anything, or
heavily ADHD driven.
Like I don't,
sitting still,
like sitting still, and we sit there for like a good 3 minutes, which is basically a lifetime, at listening to nature. And Quinn's like, "Okay, Mummy, let's go now." And I was like, "Who is this child?
That's amazing.
What has happened? Why? What? Like beautiful. Genuinely, no idea. I just no idea."
But it's always a bit alarming when they start behaving like a neurotypical from nowhere, isn't it?
What's going on?
That's not what I understand from you. Yeah. Two other flip moments from Jay. One was when he went to an animal sanctuary. Tam took them all to an animal sanctuary as something to do in the summer holidays, and Jay was not impressed. He did not want to be there, and he was not impressed by seeing animals that he'd never seen before. And Tam just texted me verbatim what he said, and it simply said, "This is wildly tedious. Half the animals aren't here, and the other half are rubbish." It's Jay in
Amazing.
nature. Jay in nature
Amazing.
there. That is one for the TripAdvisor reviews, isn't it? And the other one that he said to me was, "Right now, I wish that gravity would reverse. Just for me, though, so I can get away from you."
Oh.
So he could just basically be beamed up into the sky. So yeah, that was a wonderful moment of honesty from Jay there, and scientific impossibility as well.
Tiny epic wins.
We're going to do tiny epic wins now. These are the moments that in a neurotypical world would just be, no great shakes, but for neurodivergents, they are epic wins. Have you got anything for us, Kate?
Will you put your plate in the dishwasher? No. No, you will not. It's not that difficult. You just pick it up, you put it in the dishwasher, then you leave. I don't want anything else from you. Just that one thing.
This is my hill. I'm going to die on this fucking hill. Put your plate in the dishwasher. Yeah.
They are not getting it. And I realised that Quinn kind of responds to like boundaries, barriers, the moving from one space to another.
Mm-hmm.
And actually somehow they can kind of, the physicality of moving one space to another has an impact on them. And so I would just say stop every time they got to the threshold of the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say, Quinn, stop. Quinn, come on, dishwasher. And they'd look at you. And, sometimes they're pissy and difficult and it doesn't work. But sometimes they look at you and they just realise, oh, yeah. And they hadn't realised. And they just, the ADHD-ness had not triggered. But somehow.
Yes. Yeah.
But suddenly they've started literally hitting their own wall. And there's no door, there's no wall. You can just see they hit a wall and they turn around and they put their plate in the dishwasher.
Oh my God.
Loads of days last week, they hit the wall and they went, and they turned around and they put the plate in the dishwasher.
So they got to the threshold of the door and went, "Oh, I forgot."
Literally,
and then
just like
around.
They were hitting it. It's like a mine.
It is possible. It's achievable. You've achieved what I could only dream of.
But it was so fascinating because it was literally like they'd hit a wall. They'd almost like splay, That's kind of amazing.
That is an epic win. That is amazing. And how many repetitions do you reckon
like 2
until
years.
it got there? 2 years of repetition, 3 meals a day.
It's a lot. Absolutely. And that thing of you were saying when you was like, can't be bothered. And I was like, no, gonna die on this hill.
Well done. Congratulations. What's the next one now you've got?
Wee on the toilet seat.
Oh, you'll never change that, dude. That's just baked into being male. Sorry. I still struggle with that, Kate. So I've got a tiny epic win, which is it's a major win. So this is the postscript to the story that I told earlier about Jay taking a knife to the air tent. I sent him away to go in his own tent and I just don't need to see you now. Go and think. Do whatever you need to do. I just need to be on my own for a bit. And I was going through loads of stuff because it's like, well, now the air tent's fucked. So what, we have to go. And like, maybe I could find a way to patch it up because we're with people who could help. And I'm going through all these logistics of like, and what if I take Jay home, but leave the other two here because they're enjoying it? And maybe I can have someone who can take Jay, like as a parent of a neurodivergent, logistics, just to constantly like the cogs are whirring. Here's a variable I hadn't thought about. And I'm sitting there on my own, just thinking through how I can make this okay in the best possible way for everyone involved. And Jay came over to me and he sat down and he went, "I've been thinking about things and it's been on my conscience and I'm sorry." He said sorry, Kate. He apologized for what he did and he offered to pay for it. Like, I cannot tell you like what a genuine shock that might have been. The first time in his life that he's actually shown contrition and shown a desire to atone for something that he's done where he's crossed the line. And it was amazing. This sort of out of what was quite a despairing moment, I was just like, oh my God, I was like, and I was just trying to keep my shit together. And he also then agreed to stay the extra night, and that we would go the next day. But he was like, "We'll do it." And again, want to talk about those moments where they got it for that one moment in his whole life. He understood the repercussions of what he'd done and wanted to atone for it, and that was such a massive moment for me. It made it all okay. Do you know what I mean?
And that is how you know you're not raising an arsehole.
Yeah, maybe you're right. Yeah, wowzers. Okay, I think that's it. I think we've reached the end of this episode of Neuroshambles. So, Kate, thank you so much for coming on and sharing your neuroshambolic lifestyle and your definition of what an arsehole is. I'd also like to say a massive thank you to the audience for being here. As ever, your presence is always welcome. And if you want to follow us on the socials, please do. We are on Facebook and Instagram and Threads, if you're that way inclined. Also, if you want to email us anything, if you've got any what the flip moments that you want to email us to share, please feel free. Or any suggestions for show topics that you want us to cover, then email hello@neuroshambles.com. But other than that, hope you've enjoyed the episode. All that remains for me to say is have a nice life.